Hello developers, once again welcome back to another exciting episode of this RESTful API series. In today's video, we're going to talk about the operation fetch and delete. And in today's video, we're going to demonstrate how to delete an article and edit an article from our database. So without further ado, let's get started. To perform a REST API update method or to update an article from our database, we will use either put or patch. But for now, let us go back to articlecontroller.js file to set up our controller for the update operation. In order for us to create a single article, we have created this create article controller. To retrieve all articles, we have created this get articles controller, while to retrieve a single data or single article, we have created this get article controller. Now let us create a controller or handler for our update operation. To begin with, let us create a controller function and name it update article. Let's add an async keyword because this process is an asynchronous function. This is then followed by an arrow function. After this, we're going to destructure the request.params object. Request.params is an object that holds route parameters. Basically, we're going to do the same statement that we did in here. So we can copy this one or type it manually. After that, let's create a conditional statement. For the condition, we will check if the ID is a mongoose type object valid ID. So basically, we're going to use the same code that we have used in this statement. We're going to pass in the ID in here to check if it is valid or not. After that, let us send a response status 404 and a JSON error message article not found. Now to keep our code organized, let us just add some comments in here. The comment will be check if the ID is valid. Just like what we did in the previous controllers, we will use the article schema model followed by a method, but this time we're going to use find1 and update. Then let's place it inside a constant variable. This process is asynchronous, so let's use await. Let us type article dot find1 and update. Then let us pass the ID as a parameter. Actually, scratch that. Let's specify a filter by making this into a query object. To do that, let's create a property ID and the value ID. After that, let us pass an object containing data that will be sent via HTTP request body. For this, let us type 3 periods followed by the request.body. These 3 periods is what we call the spread operator, and it will basically take all the properties and values from the request body and apply them to the MongoDB document that we are updating. Now let's create a conditional statement just like what we did in here to check if the article exists in our database. For the condition, we will just add an exclamation mark and the article variable to check if the variable is empty. If the article don't exist, let's send a response status 404 and a JSON response article not found. I also noticed a typo error here in line number 46, so let us just fix this. And also, to make this code a little more organized, let's add a comment in here. The comment will be check if the article exists. And we are actually done with this controller. First, we check the ID if it is valid. And then using that ID, we find that article and updated it using the request body. And then we check if the article exists. Now, if the article exists, let's send a response status 200 and the article back to the client in a JSON format. We will just pass this article back to the client. Finally, let us now export this function controller update article that we have created. Let us just add it here in the module.exports. Now that we are done exporting our update article in the article controller, let us now proceed to the article routes. Our router is kind of piling up at the moment, so let's add a comment to make this more organized. For this one, let's add a comment create an article. This one will be get all articles. And for this one, let's add a comment get a single article. Finally, since we're going to create an update article router, let's create a comment update an article. For this one, we're still going to use the router keyword and then followed by a patch method this time. This will accept an argument which is the path that contains an ID. This will also handle a function parameter, so let us pass our update article, but before that, let us import the update article function first. Then let us pass the update article in here. Finally, let us now run our server using our terminal. Let us just type nodemon followed by the name of our server, server.js. Let us just wait for a few seconds for the server to start. And there we have it. Our server is up and running. Now to test this API, let's proceed back to Postman to see if this will work or there will be any errors. In the Postman, we already have the post method and the get all articles method. Let us just save this get a single article method. Since we're going to update an article, let us retrieve this article that we have in here. In here, we have the sample article number 2, the content, and the author. The update is let us change our API from get to patch. The API will still be the same, we're still going to target a certain ID, but in this case, we're going to send a request body with updated content. So let us proceed to the body and change the content. First, let us just match this into article number 2. The author should be Jane Williams, so let me just copy this one and paste this into our body. For the changes or the update, let us change our content. Maybe let us just add a word new in here. Alright, finally, in our API, it is important for us to remember that our ID should match the ID of the article that we would like to edit, and then the operation that we're going to use is patch. We are all set and ready, so let us send this request. Alright, right now it is giving us an error, so let us go back to the VS Code and check if our server crashes. And yes, our server crashed. It is telling us that the request is not defined. To fix this, let us go back to the article controller.js and see what happened. Alright, I think I know now what is missing that caused our server to crash. Our update article function will handle two parameters, and that is the request and the response. I forgot to pass it in here, so let's type request and response. Alright, let us go back to our terminal. And we can also see that NodeMon automatically restarted our server. Now let's go back to the Postman and let us now try to send this patch request again to the server. And it looks like our server crashed again. Let's go back to the VS Code and check if what is wrong this time. Let me just take a quick look in our code. Our error is telling us that Mongoose is not defined. I think I have a typographical error in here. Mongoose should be single O, so let us change this one. Once we are done typing the corrections, our Node1 will automatically restart our server. Let's just wait for a few seconds. Alright, our server is up and running again. Now let us go back to Postman and hopefully there are no more errors in our server. Finally, let us send this patch request again. And there we have it. We have successfully sent a patch request to our server and our article is updated successfully. Now let us confirm this, but first let us save this patch request API. To confirm this, let us send a get article request API. And there we have it. We have successfully updated our article. We can see now that there is a changes in our article content. We are almost done in our REST API CRUD operations, and the only operation that is left to do is the delete operation. And for that, let us go back to VS Code. Let me just minimize our terminal a little bit. And for our delete an article controller, let us create a comment. And of course, the comment will be delete an article. Let us create a function controller and let's name this one delete article. As usual, this process is asynchronous, so let's add the async keyword followed by an arrow function. And before we forget again, let us add the request and the response parameter in here. And just like what we did before, let us destructure our ID from the body using the request.params keyword. We will also check if the ID is valid, so let's add a comment for this one. And of course, we're going to add a conditional statement. For the condition, let us add an exclamation point that is equivalent to not equal to. This is then followed by the Mongoose keyword, followed by the keyword types, and object ID after that. And finally, the keyword is valid that will accept a parameter which is the ID. We will then return a response message for our for indicating that there is an error and an error message in a form of JSON. And the error message should be article not found. Now let's create a constant variable and name it article. This process is asynchronous, so let's add an await keyword. Then we will use our article schema model. This is then followed by a method, and for this one we're going to use find1 and delete. And since this is a method, let's add a parenthesis. For this one, we're also going to pass it in an object form in order for us to obtain the variable from our request parameters. Our next step is checking if this article exists in our database. So let's add a comment for that. The comment will be check if the article exists. There is also a typo in here, let's fix it. Once again, let's create a conditional statement. Then we will check if the article is a false value or empty. If it's empty, we're going to return a response status 404 indicating that there is an error and a response article not found in the form of JSON. I also noticed a typo error in here, so let's fix this one. This is then followed by .json and the error message. Finally, we are almost done with this controller. To sum things up, what we did here is first, we extract our ID by destructuring our request parameters body. Then after extracting the ID from our request, we check if it is a valid ID. If it is a valid ID, it will then find this article and delete it. If we won't be able to find this article or if this article doesn't exist, we're going to send a response status 404 and the error message article not found. Finally, we're down to the last step for this controller. And the last step that we're going to do is to send the response status 200 and the article back in the JSON format. This is us telling to the client that we have successfully deleted the article. And of course, we're also going to export this delete article controller function inside this module that exports. We are now done setting up our controller, so let's move on to our router. First, let us add a comment for this delete article controller. And once again, we're going to use the keyword router followed by a method. And for this one, we're going to use the delete method. This will also handle an argument, which is the path for the ID. And a parameter delete article. But first, let us import this coming from the controller. Let us just pass this function parameter in here. And I'm also a bit perfectionist, so let's add a semicolon in these statements. Finally, now that we are done setting up our controller and router, let us now move on to the Postman. In our Postman, we have demonstrated different kinds of method or operations such as post, get, and patch. Let's proceed to get all articles to see the current number of all articles in our database. Right now we have 3, so let's add 1. Let us change the body, and this will be article number 4. Let us also change the content. I will just place a random content. Maybe let's type, this article should be deleted. Let us also change the author. Maybe let us just place a random guy. Finally, let us send this request. And there we have it. We have successfully saved this article in our database. Now, this should appear once we send the request for get all articles. There we have it. Now, let's try to delete this article number 4. First, let us copy the ID and place it in our API. After that, let us change our operation from get to delete. Finally, let us send this request to the server. And there we have it. We have successfully deleted this article number 4. Let us just save this API. Now, let us confirm if this sample article number 4 is still saved in our database. To do that, let us just simply go back to the get all articles API. Let us send this request. And there we have it. We can now see that there are only 3 items in our database. At this point, we have successfully performed and demonstrated all 4 operations of CRUD, that is create, read, update, and delete. And since this demonstration leverages the MongoDB, we actually have a working backend server up and running. Now let us try adding another article and let's observe the movement of this operation in the MongoDB database. Let us just use the post API again and add another article. For the body of data, let us use the same data that we have used a while ago. Let us just send this request. Now let's proceed to the MongoDB and check if this data is already added to our database. In the MongoDB, let us just click Browse Collections. And in here, in our collections of database, we can see that we have 4 items in our data. And here is the article number 4 that we have recently created. Now let us try and delete this data again using our delete API in the Postman. Let us proceed back to the delete API. Let us now hit send to delete this data. And we have an error, article not found. I kinda forgot that we have recreated this article, so it has generated a new ID. So let's copy the new ID. Let us copy this ID. And paste it here. Finally, let's send this again. So we have successfully deleted this sample article number 4 without any problem. Now let's proceed to MongoDB and see if these changes reflected to our database. Let us just refresh the page. And there we have it. Using our API, we have successfully deleted a data from our database. And that's it for this video. We've explored the power of patch and delete requests, allowing us to edit and delete articles via RESTful API. If you found this content valuable, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow developers. Once again, this is Ron Gilbert and we hope to see you again in our next video series. Stay tuned and happy coding!